Good evening and welcome to the Council House. For 133 years, this has been the headquarters of Birmingham City Council and a symbol of civic pride. But today, the Council's leader said cuts to the city's budget amount to the end of local government as we know it. Well, that was the stark warning following the announcement of a multi-million-pound reduction in government's grant. So let's take a look at those figures. The UK's largest authority's grant will be cut by £52 million next year. Birmingham already had to make cuts of £400 million, but that is expected to be closer to £500 million. And the number of full-time council jobs is expected to fall by around 1,000. Well, in a moment, we'll be hearing from the city's leader, Sir Albert Ball. But first of all, BBC1's political reporter, Elizabeth Glinker, has been following the day's events.
Briefing the media on cuts he says could change the face of local government, the Birmingham City Council leader, Sir Albert Ball. The biggest local authority in Europe says despite savings targets of £400 million in this Parliament, it's likely a further £100 million will now have to be saved. The man who was running the council until May says the current administration is scaremongering.
I think this displays political cowardice and weak leadership. We, over the 8 years, delivered budgets. We kept to them. We balanced our budgets. And in fact, only the most current one, which had to have £220 million worth of savings, came in under budget.
The leader of the council says that these spending reductions are so big that it's no longer possible to salami slice from different budgets and that some services are going to have to go. He also says that this could be the beginning of the end of local government as we know it. So how does Birmingham compare to other local authorities? The city has seen one of the biggest reductions in government funding in the country at 8% and cut around 4,000 full-time posts before today's announcement. But the Department for Local Government points out that spending per household here is still over £2,500 a year, nearly £400 more than the average spent by councils in England. The Liberal Democrats, who ran the council in coalition with the Tories for 8 years, say the local authority must look at new ways of providing services.
It is pulling a huge amount in government grants out of the local authority. As far as you're concerned, is that a good thing then?
No, it's not. But local government has become over-dependent upon Whitehall funding, and that is a bad thing. And we've got to get away from it and broaden the base of local government income so that we do have more freedoms and flexibilities.
The final settlement from the government is likely to be known by December. In the next few weeks, council leaders will begin a consultation with the public on where the axe may fall. Elizabeth Glinker, BBC Midlands Today, Birmingham.
Well, a short while ago, I spoke to the leader of Birmingham City Council, Sir Albert Ball, and I began by asking him how much responsibility does he take for the situation?
Well, the problem is that government do indeed have a great influence over the monies available to local authorities. In this case, we're responding to significant cuts that government are making in the money that will come to us next year. But
you've got to deal with that situation, haven't you? So how are you going to respond? Where are the cuts going to come?
The cuts are going to come right across the board, there is no doubt about it. We are looking probably to take about 120 million out of the budget, and over the 6 years from 2011 to 2017, we think Birmingham City Council will have taken something like 48%, nearly 50% of the controllable budget out of the services that Birmingham currently provide.
And that is across the board, nothing sacred, nothing ring-fenced?
Right across the board. This year we are not quite doing it in the systematic way that we want to, but we've already started the work for 14-15, where we'll look at services to see what services are statutory, what are non-statutory, what services are delivering outcomes that we want, and we will then take decisions to decommission certain services.
Can you give me any idea of what services they might be? I mean, is anything sacred? Can you say at the moment we definitely won't be cutting children's social services, for example, in the light of the Ofsted report last week?
All we can say at this moment in time is that we're going to try and introduce a budget which is fair to everybody.
But what does that mean in reality?
Well, when I look at the cuts and when I take those cuts issues out to the public, they'll start to tell us which of those cuts are acceptable in the circumstances we face. By 2017, after 6 years of cutting, we will have taken out something like 50% of the controllable budget of the City Council. That's a huge level of reduction of services.
So what's your vision for Birmingham?
I still believe Birmingham is a great city and will continue to be a great city and will offer jobs and opportunities for people who live here.
How can it do that, though? How can it do that with such budget constraints?
Because it can work with the private sector, it can work with other agencies, it can work with the people of Birmingham. I remember a scheme years ago whereby we put in some small sums of capital, European capital on top of that, and we got a revolving capital fund as a consequence in bringing about regeneration in part of the city. Now that was done and is still actually happening, but that was levered in with a very small amount of City Council money. That's about being innovative. And that's what we will have to be in the future.
In a word, how serious is the situation that you face?
This is as serious as I've ever known it in local government.
Well, that was the leader of Birmingham City Council, Sir Albert Ball, talking to me a short while ago. He says that this is the end of local government as we know it. But what does that mean to the people who actually use these services? Well, a little earlier we went out onto the streets of Birmingham and asked people who do they blame for the cuts?
It affects people more than I think the council probably realise. They're seeing numbers and not understanding the effect that it has on people's lives.
I would like to know what they are spending it on.
Yeah.
It's certainly not on the elderly.
But you need to use wisdom where the cuts need to be, you know, not just cut everything.
I just think it's mismanagement and public, fortunately, I think it's public sector's inadequacies within their own organisations.
Yeah. Do they have to do it to make ends meet? I don't know.
So that's the view of people who actually pay for these services. But what about people who work for the council? Well, I'm joined by Ravi Subramanian, who he's the Regional Secretary of Public Sector Union Unison. Ravi, what have your members been saying to you today?
Our members are very, very worried. They're worried about their jobs, they're worried about the future of Birmingham, the services to the community. And Unison itself, we're really worried about the massive impact this is going to have on the local economy. You can't cut that much money out of the City Council's budget without it hitting the local economy. And we've already seen the local economy devastated by the government's failed austerity measures.
But these cuts are going to happen, so don't you just have to face up to the reality of what Sir Albert Ball is saying, finding a different way of working? We can't work the way we always have.
Well, one thing that we want to do, Unison are going to be starting a Stand Up for Birmingham campaign, because it's clear that the government have targeted these cuts at Birmingham. Birmingham has suffered bigger cuts than any other part, most of the other parts of the country. And when you look at the leafy shire counties, where the majority of run by Tories, they don't seem to have had the same cuts. So we want to stand up for Birmingham, take a message to Eric Pickles, and say Brummies deserve better. In reality, what difference is that going to make? Well, if we don't stand up and fight, it's not going to make nothing will happen. We need everybody from the community, from the business community, from the Labour-run City Council, from the workers, everybody to come together, and Unison will be running a campaign to stand up for Birmingham. OK, so just in a few words, how hopeful are you that these cuts they won't be reversed altogether, but shaved back a bit? Well, when we show the figures to Eric Pickles, and when him and other people can see the impact that it's having on Birmingham, not just on the workers who work for the City Council, not just on the people who use the services, but it's hitting the local economy, and we need to get the economy back on track. OK, Ravi Subramanian, thank you very much indeed. We'd love to hear your views. How are the council cuts going to affect you? Please get in touch via email, Facebook or Twitter, and I'll read out some of your comments a little later in the programme. But now for the rest of the day's news, back to Dan Pallett in the studio.
Thanks, Mary.